Sally Simmons, welcome to CamTalks.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much for coming. I know you are a very busy lady. I mean,
Sometimes.
Well, I mean, if anyone on the island is currently having a medical problem, is there somebody else?
Thank God, yes. Probably much better at it than I am. Yeah. No, I'm kind of semi-retired in general practice terms, but occasionally, when they're desperate, they'll call upon me.
Excellent. So, well, I'm so happy you're on Alderney, but can you take me back a little bit, because you've done so many things in your life, and of course a lot of people know people on the island, but they don't really know everything about the people. So tell me, where were you born? That's the first start.
I was born in Guernsey.
Whoa, hold on a second.
I'm a donkey.
Really?
Yeah, afraid so.
Wow. So, and did you know about Alderney growing up?
Yeah.
Oh, what did you think about Alderney?
I loved it because my parents were school teachers, and they didn't have a lot of money at the time. I mean, we're talking, when was I born? Late 50s. So my father was a teacher at Elizabeth College, and my mother was a PE teacher at the Girls' Grammar and at Blanchland. And they didn't have a lot of money because teachers didn't get paid a huge amount in those days. And so we couldn't afford to go away. And this was around about the time when everybody was getting on planes and going to Spain, Torremolinos and all this, with the sort of the new play Benidorm. And we couldn't go to places like that because we just didn't have the money. So we came to Alderney instead. And arguably, I would say that was probably a much better deal for me and my sister. So we came up here, and my father knew... he used to teach a guy called Johnny Hart, whose parents ran the Harbour Lights Hotel. And they were very kind and said, look, come and stay at the hotel, and we'll look after you. And we'll charge you a lot less than we would for the normal visitors.
Aww.
So we got a good deal because they just felt sorry, I think, for my parents who were struggling a bit.
Wow.
So, that was how we got here. And I remember... bikes, I think, out towards the nunnery and places like that. I found an arrowhead, a bronze arrowhead or something, years and years ago. Yeah, it ended up in the Alderney Museum. They were all very excited about that. Can't remember where I found it now.
Yeah. I'm always so jealous of people who've grown up here, because obviously back then there was still a lot of stuff to discover, really.
Yeah, it was a lot fewer people around, obviously a lot fewer cars and all the rest of it. And, I find Alderney now is how Guernsey was, though, 40 years ago. A lot less cars, a lot less commercial. And I think one of the reasons why my parents left Guernsey in 1993 was because of the commercialisation and the way things were going with, life in general there.
So was this before the finance industry took off?
It was as it was happening. I think my father began to realise he wasn't terribly happy at work. He'd changed jobs slightly anyway and gone into schools radio, actually, in Guernsey. So
schools radio?
Yeah.
You mean like a radio station?
Yes.
For schools?
Yeah, so it was an educational thing.
Wow.
So, he set that up at the
So
teacher
he was like
centre.
a content creator?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about your mother? What did she do?
She carried on. She ended up working for the Guernsey Press as a journalist.
I love this. This is crazy. Yeah. You're from a generation of storytellers.
So we end up doing different things. You train as one thing and you end up doing something slightly akin to it, but not entirely the same sort of thing, but linked in, and it works. And my father, I think, ended up, he used to teach he used to teach mechanical drawing, woodwork and music. And he used to run all the background sets for the plays, the not pantomime so much, but all the theatre stuff that the Elizabeth College lads used to put on. So there's always Shakespeare productions and things like that. And he would have a group of lads from the cadet force who would paint the background scenery and all that sort of thing. And that kind of transferred, I suppose, to a pretty artistic way of thinking, particularly with his music. He was known as Elvis because Elvis, of course, was big and famous as a guitarist. And my father played guitar and banjo. And he was actually very, very good at it. He used to play in concerts and things in London just after the war. So he was quite well known, and the lads knew him as Elvis. So, and he was a good man. He was a good teacher. And my mum, she took into journalism. She was always really good at writing, and that's kind of panned out a bit, I think, with myself. Now I'm looking at writing. I've got a book in here.
Ooh.
There's a book in here. Which I'm quite looking forward to.
Quiz you about that later. And did you have brothers and sisters growing up?
Yeah, I've got a younger sister. She's 2 years younger than me. And she, from the age of 3, wanted to be a nurse. and she had all the gear, the little white thing with a little red cross on the front of it.
Yeah.
um, and she became a nurse. She went to Jersey to start doing her nurse training, and then she ended up in England and became a midwife, and she's now an advanced nurse practitioner. So she's gone sort of meteoric rise in
Wow.
nursing.
So isn't that funny? So your mum and dad had similar crafts and careers, and then you and your sister
Mm,
have also had similar careers, but
very similar.
but you've definitely gone down the more hardcore route. Can
Well,
I
maybe.
maybe? So just explain to me a little bit. So you grew up in Guernsey, and at
Yeah,
what age did you decide to join the military? Because I know that was it the Navy first or
yeah.
the Army? Which one? The
Navy
Navy.
first. Yeah.
Wow. What made you do that?
Well, at the age of 14, I discovered scuba diving, and the sea and boats and everything like that. And my parents weren't into boats at all, so there was no background there. But my PE teacher at school was also my godmother. She's a great friend of my mother's, and they trained at the same teacher training school for PE. And she took me under her wing in terms of teaching me to snorkel when I was 14, because I've got this thing. We used to swim at the school from the Ladies' College in Melrose down at the Valette, because we didn't have a school pool at the time. And so we all went down there. I can't remember how we got there, but that was where all the swimming galas were at in the saltwater
Mm.
swimming pools. And I hated swimming there because I didn't know what was underneath me and I needed to know. And she said, right, okay, mask and snorkel, then you can have a look. And that was it. That was the beginning of one of the other big things in my life with diving. And so I did that and I thought, right, carried on with that for what, 6 years. I thought, right, well, the obvious thing is to join the Navy, which I did
Obviously.
at 19. Of course you do, yeah.
So you're
Well, it's to
19.
sea. I was 19.
And where did you go to do that then? Was it
So I went
Leamington? Is
to
that?
no, I went to Haslar in Gosport, which was the Royal Naval Hospital, and that was to do my state registered nurse training. So my sister and I ended up being nurses. Yeah, I changed. I went to the dark side a little bit
Were
later.
you trying to outdo your sister
No,
there?
never, 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 never. She was so much better at it than I was. She really, I mean, she was literally born to be a nurse. She really was. I hadn't a clue. I just liked the uniform. So I think that was probably the main reason. I've always been a bit of probably a uniform groupie, to be honest. I looked at this. There was a VSO magazine in the school's area where they, what do they call it when you, um,
You mean like an
careers
open
section.
careers section?
Yeah, in the careers section, there was this thing for voluntary service overseas. And inside that was a picture of a naval nurse in her uniform. And we had in those days the most beautiful hats, and they had the creases in them. So the 5 oceans and the 7 seas. Yes, that'd be right. And they were sort of in a huge, great white construction. I mean, they were so useless, really, for proper nursing, but they look great. And we had starch cuffs, starch collars. Everything was just beautifully made, and I thought, I quite like that. I could see myself in that. So I joined the Navy because I like the uniform.
I love that. That's crazy. I
Just
mean, I think
bonkers.
my mum also became a nurse because she liked the uniform as well. So I'm glad that's
Yeah,
what the NHS
so
need to start doing, isn't it?
absolutely.
Start
Yeah.
doing catwalks.
Have a nice uniform, and then you'll get a lot more nurses.
There you go. And so is there is there an order to this in terms of, you're going to train to become a nurse first or
Yeah.
do Navy stuff?
Well, the view in the services is that whatever job you do, whether it's, you draw maps or you're a nurse or a doctor or a teacher or whatever, you are a military soldier or airman or whatever first. And that was the same in the army. You're a soldier first and then you're a nurse. And the same in the Navy. You're a seafarer, if you like. I mean, I think the only sea time I ever got was on the Gosport ferry, which went between Portsmouth and Gosport. And that was all of 10 minutes, but it wasn't particularly rough.
So you were basically, so you had to go through that training, that initial training,
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
all of the stuff that we see in the movies,
Yeah.
running and jumping
Well,
and
not so much in those days. We were treated a bit more as though we were ladies, which was absolute joke, really. And it wasn't until I joined the army that I realised, this is actually how one ought to be training men and women in exactly the same way. But I got measured up for the most beautifully tailored uniform as an OIC, basic. I had no rank to my name, but we had beautifully made stuff, all sorts of stuff. And we all had all of that all done, designed for us personally. God knows how much all that cost.
Oh, well, that's the
But
taxpayers
we
for
look
you.
good. But we look great. We look
Yeah, I
marvellous.
bet. Do you know what? It's fascinating because I grew up going to the army cadets, and I was a colour sergeant by the time I left, so I got really, really passionate about it,
Yeah,
and I thought I was going to have a career in the army and stuff like that. But it was the training element that I just loved.
yeah.
If anyone actually told me to go to war, I think I'd shit myself. But it's the actual training and that
Yeah.
discipline that I feel like kind of everyone needs a little bit
I
of that.
think people do, and I think without getting political about it, I think there's always been some degree of. To me, I need order in my life, not necessarily to pigeonhole everything, although I probably do to a point. But as you grow older, you get wiser, and you realise there's more than black and white. There's a bit of grey in between. But sometimes I do like that discipline, and I despair sometimes when I just think, oh, we haven't had a good war for ages and ages, and actually this is probably what we need just to get people to realise that life isn't a luxury. You're not entitled to whatever you get, and they're talking about some form of national service again, and I think, okay, there's pros and cons in that, but. If more people did join the services, I think, they generally come out of it, the ones I've met anyway, and the ones who've stuck at it, they've ended up, you're never really out of a job if you've
Mm.
done well and you stick at it. I mean, obviously, I know there's an awful lot of ex-servicemen on the streets now who are really struggling. And I find that very sad. And I think, more should be done about that. But by and large, when I came out, there was, you will always be in a job. And I think if you're professionally qualified, that certainly holds good. So,
Mhm.
getting a qualification, my nursing qualification by 1981, and then growing on from that, I think was a really useful thing. So yeah, getting a qualification that the taxpayer's paying for,
I
but
love that.
they're doing it for the
It's an
NHS as well.
investment.
Of course, it's
I
an
mean, that's the
investment.
point.
Yeah,
Like, you've given
yeah,
so much back again, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what we never get to see. When I was in the cadets, I was so fascinated by what was going on in Afghanistan and Iraq, and obviously I loved the movies. And it kind of did make me, want to go and do it. But obviously nowadays, with what's going on in the world, I mean, it is not as black and white as it used to be. Like, I remember, like, I used to read the Daily Mail, and it was a picture of an Apache with all these Marines hanging off it.
uh,
And now you go on social media and you can see the devastation
yeah,
instantly.
yeah.
And I find that that's a really strange thing because we're so polarized at this point. But taking me back then again, so you did your military training first.
Mm.
Did you commission as an officer or a?
No, not in the Navy. I didn't. I did 12 years in the Navy, and got promoted reasonably quickly, actually, to be fair. So if you're professionally qualified, so I was a state registered nurse in 1981, and they need you because you have to run a ward. You have to have a rank on your arm. So I was what was called a leading hand. In those days, it was senior naval nurse, which is the equivalent to a corporal in the army. So it means that you can run a ward, and people should take notice of you. Um, I think they did to a point. And then you have to go off, and as you get promoted up to petty officer and then chief petty officer, you have to do military training courses. So I ended up, in order to become a PO, I had to go to HMS Royal Arthur, which is up near Wiltshire, in Wiltshire. And is a lot of running around and doing ridiculous things, sort of they do all these, oh, you've got to cross this river here. It's filled to capacity with crocodiles. You've got a couple of rubber rings and 10 men, and a plank of wood. Figure out how you're going to get to the other
Go.
side without being eaten, this sort of stuff, And this is all leadership training, really important stuff, crocodile infested
Was this
waters.
mixed boys and girls?
I was the only girl
Ooh.
and 20 blokes.
And how did you feel?
It was great. I got really well looked after, but I
Brilliant.
also was aware at that stage that I had to really be as good as them, if not better, to be considered even half as good. And some of them, they were built to run, and I was never built to run, but you had to run your basic fitness tests, and you had to do them carrying rucksacks and in boots and all this sort of thing. And I was as fit as a flea at the time, so I enjoyed it. And at the end of it, we had to do what's called in the Navy a sod's opera. And this is a bit of a sort of thing like your dad does, basically. You spoof stuff, sketches, funny sketches, and you have to take the mickey out of people. So the officer in charge happened to be actually my old nursing officer, male nursing officer, who had taught me in my nurse training at Hasler. and he was now the officer in charge of the medics doing
Wow.
leadership training. So I borrowed his epaulets, his lieutenant's epaulets. And of course, women as lieutenants wasn't really the done thing back in, what was this, 1986, I suppose. And so I just sort of did a sort of mini Hitler sort of spoof of,
Oh my
and the
gosh.
guys all had to fall in and do what I told them, and it was just
Oh,
the whole thing
wow.
was really funny, and we had to just march around and do really stupid things, but the whole thing was great. Loved it, passed it, and I wanted to go back. I enjoyed it so much. I wanted to go back there as an instructor, but they said no. You recently qualified staff nurse. You've got to.
Go on, get out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
so this is great, isn't it? Because that level of training, and you, I think you learn to respect the instructors. Because I mean, I remember going on courses and stuff and seeing instructors who, you always have the imagination that they're going to be like this, and then they're like this, and you realize that they're really good equipping you with all these different skills. It's not, who can be the best shooter or the best runner.
no,
It's like, let's see what happens
it's
if
team.
you all fall apart.
It's the team. And
That's
that was
it.
the one thing they're sort of trying to teach you in all aspects of both the Navy and the Army that I've been involved in. This is, it doesn't matter if you're on a ward, you're on board a ship, you're out in Northern Ireland on an operational tour, wherever. It's the team that matters. The individual is just part of that.
I'm going to say it. I think the States of Alderney need to go to the military training school and have a bit of teamwork. Anyway, before we jump into that side of things. Obviously, they sent you off. They said, "Sorry, Sally,
Off you go.
off you go." Tell me a little bit about the situations you found yourself in. Then, obviously, is this during the 80s?
Yeah. So
80s?
I qualified as a state registered nurse in 1981. And got a draft down to RNH Plymouth. The reason I wanted to go down there was because the best diving is in the West Country. And that was just sort of part of my own agenda, was to be
Get
based
back in the
down there.
sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The water's a lot clearer. It's just great. And bearing in mind, I was young, free and single at the time. So that was another bit of a bonus. Plymouth, great run ashore, really good social life down there. And within about 4 or 5 months of me getting stuck into my work in the emergency department at the Royal Naval Hospital in Stonehouse at Plymouth, the Argentinians had invaded the Falklands. They'd taken South Georgia. They'd taken the Royal Marines who were down there prisoner. So England went to war. Britain went to war with Argentina. And I went, oh, great. My mum phoned me up. She said, whatever you do, do not volunteer. She'd never volunteer for anything. In fact, that was probably her parting words when I joined the Navy. Don't ever volunteer for anything.
What's your job?
So I volunteered, obviously. And I went, yes, young, free and single, you can go. You're a newly qualified staff nurse. Perfect.
Wow.
You've got no kids or anybody else to sort of be too worried. Go down to the Royal Marine Barracks tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, and sign out all your kits. So we ended up wearing green stuff, khaki stuff. We went from our beautiful hats into proper military stuff, boots. And, this is great,
Another uniform.
proper soldier uniform,
Course.
Yeah, it was great.
And then were you going on the ships then?
Yeah.
And
So
part of the
yeah.
invasion force? Is that what it's called?
They took a load of ships up from trade. It was a school ship, Uganda. She'd been involved, and a bunch of kids had been in the Med. They were on these educational cruises. The Navassa and the Uganda were the two schools' educational ships, which P&O used to run. And they took Uganda up from trade. They chucked all these school kids off somewhere and flew them home. Said, end of your tour. We need the boat for a hospital ship.
I'm acquiring this ship.
Yeah, get off you go. So they took the ship to Jib and they painted her white, put big red crosses on the side. They completely changed the back deck into a flight deck because they had to reinforce all of that so it could take really heavyweight helicopters. And we did a bit of basic training. I can't remember what we did. We had some lectures and bits and bobs. It was all very new because nobody had been to war for, 40 years? So, the rule book was, how do we start doing this? Women at sea, women at war, whoa, hang on a minute. And this is how daft it was. We flew out from Bryce Norton, I think it was, on a Hercules. And the matrons, bearing in mind at this time, the Queen Alexander's Royal Naval Nursing Service was run completely by women. There were male nurses, but the hierarchy were all women. And so they said, you wear your number one uniform. So you know that nice tailored uniform I was telling you about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we wore that jacket,
Oh,
skirt, stockings, shoes,
the
hat
lot.
on a Hercules. That's how we flew out to war. And yet we'd all been issued all this, trousers and boots, which would have been a bit more
Is that
sensible.
like just in case someone took a picture or something? And...
I don't know what they were thinking. But, this is the nurses going off to war in number one uniform.
Wow.
Everybody else goes off dressed appropriately
Yeah,
in
yeah,
battle
of
dress.
course. I want to say a massive thank you to Channel Seaways for sponsoring this podcast and honestly for keeping Alderney alive. They're the reason our food arrives, cars turn up, and occasionally they even ship horses and cannons too. They make it all seem effortless, like clockwork, and thanks to them, we get to feed our families and enjoy a glass of wine at the end of the day. They've been supporting the Channel Islands for over 50 years and with a brilliant team who genuinely care. So go over to their Facebook page, give them a like, show your appreciation, and support the people that keep Alderney civilised. Now back to the episode. So, I obviously wasn't alive during the Falklands War, but, what the severity of it was quite serious. When did it get serious in your mind?
We were heading down south towards, I'm not sure if we had got to Ascension or we'd gone past Ascension. And then those famous pipes I was telling you about earlier on, somebody said, right, do you hear there? HMS Sheffield had been hit and sunk. And there were lots of casualties.
Wow.
And it was at that point that we went, oh, hang on, this is real. Because I think a lot of people were thinking we'd get down to the equator and they go, yeah, it's all over. Henry Kissinger's done his thing. He was the guy, I think, the diplomat that the Americans put up to go and talk between the Brits and the Argentinians to try and, pave the way for peace talks, and it didn't work. And so when they hit the Sheffield, that was when we first realised there was, we really were going to be continuing down south.
You heard this through the
tannoy
speakers.
Yeah.
And that was the Argentinians had sunk a British battleship.
Yeah. It was, I was 24 years old. It was quite a shock to say, this is for real. We really are going to war. We're going to, at the time, you just, everything's lovely when you're 24. It's all peace and love and roses. Nothing bad ever happens in your life. Then all of a sudden, within a week of getting down there, things did start to get bad, and you see things that you really wish you hadn't seen, and you can't unsee them. Really critically injured people. And I looked after a guy from the Sheffield, whose name was Chief Petty Officer John Strange. I will never forget him. He's a good buddy. And he had 60% burns to his body. His face was fine, but his body was really badly burnt. And he'd been brought to HMS Hermes, I think, alongside a body bag for him, just in case. This is all out in the public domain, so this isn't anything secret. And he knows all of this. And there was every expectation, because in military warfare, you do the most that you can for the most people. You don't concentrate all your effort into one person when other people, many more people could die as a result if you concentrate all your efforts. So you do as much as you can for the many. And so some people, there was an expectation that if you got 60% burns, and back in 1982, there's a good chance that your chance of dying is pretty high, to be honest. He didn't. He did extremely well, actually. He had quite a bit of surgery, skin grafting and so on the Uganda. But my job was to look after him in what was the old hospital of the Uganda, which was way down in the bowels of the ship. And it had to be really hot. It was about 90 degrees in there. It was so hot. But you have to do that to reduce the fluid loss from burns victims.
Oh, interesting.
So he had drips and all the rest of it. And as he recovered, I had to put him, he had to be bathed and changed, and dressings were really, really painful, that sort of thing. And in order to minimise his pain, we developed a really good painkilling system called eggnog. And I would make him a huge jug of eggnog with a lot of alcohol in it, which obviously had to be quality tested by me before giving it to him. And he would have that along with some morphine or whatever painkillers he was having. So he would have a drink in the bath of eggnog, and then I'd do the dressings for him.
Why eggnog? Does that just take his
I don't
mind
know. I
off
think
it
it
a
was all
bit?
we had.
I love
I
that.
think it was all we had.
Drink this magic
Yes.
potion.
And he said, "I can't stand the stuff now." I said, "No, I'm the same actually." It sort of was.
Wow.
But yeah, I fed him eggnog and morphine and did all his dressings. And he did really well. And he actually went back to work after a period of recuperation.
What?
And he ended up on the Hong Kong squadron, carried on in the Navy. Yeah, it was
Jesus Christ.
remarkable recovery.
But what do you do when someone's in that position? I mean, in terms of like, they must be terrified, and are you?
We're terrified as well.
Yeah.
There was aircraft flying around. There was always, even, you might be in a big ship that's white and got big red crosses on the side, but there's always the argument, well, those red crosses are a great big target.
That they don't hit me targets,
Yeah.
or here I am.
We had to go out every night. We had to go into what was called the Red Cross box. So we sailed away from potential, hit and miss. But right at the end of the war, I think an aircraft missile, a Sidewinder missile, went off from the land, and they're heat-seeking missiles, and we were the hottest thing, and we were actually just outside Stanley. We'd gone ashore, in fact, because the war was over, the surrender had been signed. And then a Sidewinder went off, and it hit. It was aiming for us, apparently. It didn't hit us. Unfortunately, it hit a group of soldiers, and some of them were really badly injured. And we ended up taking them on even after the surrender had been signed, and they, one of them had lost his leg.
That's
It was
gutting as
horrific,
well, isn't it?
absolutely horrific.
You just thought it would just end, and
Yeah,
that's
that
it.
was stopped, but it was kind of one of ours that had caused the problem. Right,
Right.
it wasn't enemy action. So yeah, and that sort of thing happened.
Obviously, when the war was progressing, eventually it boots on the ground, right? I don't really know much about the Falklands War, but then were you having to follow behind?
No, we
and
didn't. No, we
you just
didn't go
stayed out?
ashore at all. No, everything got
It's
brought
much
to us by
safer, isn't it?
helicopter. Yeah. We had everything set up. We had up by the time of the Sir Galahad and Sir Tristram, we actually set up another room for burns, and 14% of our casualties were burns as a result of that. So the Sheffield burns and the Coventry there was very small numbers burnt from that, and that's why we looked after them in the ship's hospital. And then when the Sir Galahad and Sir Tristram were bombed, and there's so many casualties from the Welsh and Scots Guards, that we ended up setting up a big room, the officers' mess. It was great. They didn't know where they could go because their bar had to be shut because we had to change it into a ward.
Sorry,
What a
sir.
shame. And we made that room. I had myself and another nurse, and we set that up as a 50-bedded burns unit, and we did that in about 2 hours. We had mattresses on the floor. It was a real field hospital, but on board a ship. And we took in 25 casualties in the first hour, all with hand and face burns.
Why hands and face?
Because they weren't wearing anti-flash. So in the Navy, and I think the gear that they had at the time wasn't particularly good quality. The material wasn't burn-proof, bomb-proof, flash-proof. It is nowadays. But the Navy certainly always do have that nowadays. But these guys obviously weren't protected. They were just in sort of normal battle dress, combat uniforms. None of that's particularly anti-flammable.
Burns are a horrific thing to obviously treat, because it's not like you can fix them or even like apply the treatment and then come back and see them later. It's like it's going to get worse.
It does. And we had so the Navy are renowned for having Chinese laundrymen on board their ships, and these guys are great. And they do all the laundry on board, and they're very used to working very hot environments. And the Sir Galahad and Sir Tristram were, no exception to that rule. They had them. And I remember one of the Chinese laundrymen, he came in and his face was like a football. It was huge, just brown from the burns. With his eyes were closed, he couldn't see a thing, and his hands were burnt. And he was absolutely terrified because he couldn't open his eyes, and he knew that his face just was swollen. And there's pictures actually in some books and in the Imperial War Museum of this. And I said to him, look, these are going to go down within about 3 days. You know, your eyes are going to open and your swelling will go down. He said, I don't believe you. And it did. And so we showed him photographs of before and after. And, you know, he wasn't the only one, but it was, I think because of the Chinese, it was just because I think they swelled up more for some reason. I don't know why, more so than the Welsh Guards did.
Wow. So you mentioned that it was about 14% of
14% of
so
casualties.
what about the rest of it then? What
Shrapnel, yeah.
many
shrapnel.
bullets? I mean, is a
Yeah, a lot of gunshot wounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
And explosives.
Is that
More
easier
just
to deal with in some way?
Well, they would go to surgery fairly quickly and have the metal stuff taken out.
Sewed up.
But, well, no, they don't. They do a thing in military surgery called delayed primary suture. So what they do is they open it all out because there's fragments and material from what they're wearing can be taken into the wound itself by a bullet or by shrapnel. You can't necessarily clean out the whole wound in a war situation. So you clean it and debride it as best you can. And then you leave them open for 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days, and then they bring them back to theatre and then sew them up once there's no sign of infection, in which time they're having loads of antibiotics and everything to try and reduce that risk.
Is it true that soldiers carry tampons with them? Because that was always the rumour in the army cadets. We were always like, have you got your tampon? Have you got your tampon? Because
Not entirely sure what you're going to do with it.
Assumed that if a hole went through you, you're going to stick that in if it was an emergency.
Yeah.
There you have it.
I have never come across a
All
soldier.
of my old cadet mates, you guys are talking shit. I love that. I love that.
I think somebody just did that to wind you guys up.
I reckon so. I reckon
Yeah.
so. So obviously the Falklands, how long did that last for? Was that?
We went down in mid-April and we came back early August. But the surrender was signed on June the 14th.
So wait, how many years?
Just one. Well, it was about 3 months, 2 months.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yeah,
so
it wasn't long.
Bit of a quick war.
Very short, very dirty. Yeah.
I remember I think a sergeant major in the Army Cadets. He was a para, and he was on an aircraft carrier, and one of the missiles dropped, and it took out his leg. And I don't know if that rings a bell. I mean, it'd be funny if it did. But you know, I always remember him just being so pissed off, you know, that it wasn't them.
It wasn't them, yeah.
Because that's what happens, right? When we're in your war. I mean, you know, they call it like blue on blue, right?
Yes.
You know, sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Sidewinder, the same sort of thing, blue on blue, and that's when you just, you know, bad luck, wrong place, wrong time.
Damn.
But yeah.
So the experience that you had in the Falklands must have, I guess, humbled you somewhat. And what was your feelings after that? Did you not want to get out?
Oh, I love. Did I enjoy it? I didn't enjoy it. It made you, you know, bearing in mind I was 24 and sort of fairly naive, but you grow up really bloody quickly in an environment like that. You learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about other people. And I came back, and we had 3 weeks leave, and I came back to Guernsey because my parents were still living here then, obviously, and my aunt, Pat Topless, was living in Sark at the time, and my mad aunt Pat, who I absolutely adored, very, very eccentric lady, but she said, would you like to come and stay with me, get away from all the chit chat and stuff that's going on? And I said I would love to, and so I went to Sark for a week or so, and just sort of sat on the beach and sunbathed, and you know, this was August, so it was all quite nice. There was a few other Channel Islanders and people from Guernsey, so I've met a few people since then who served down south on different ships, and got quite friendly with a couple of them since then. But I didn't really sort of have very much to do. We just, you know, met up for drinks afterwards, that sort of thing. But it wasn't particularly, I mean, war isn't nice. I would never say it was a nice environment. But yeah, it was a big learning curve, you know, vertical learning curve as far as I was concerned. And then I went back and just carried on. And this is the big problem I found, you know, the same thing happened in the army. You know, you go and do an operational tour somewhere and you're full on, you know, you're carrying a weapon, you're doing all sorts of stuff that, you know, a nurse doesn't normally do. And you come back and everybody's just the same as they were. And you find it really difficult to fit back in again. And you can't find anybody, unless you talk to somebody who's been there and who gets it, you kind of get a bit isolated. And I can understand now why some people can end up with problems like PTSD, because there's nobody to share that experience with. Do you know what I mean? And
Mm.
it's I found the same thing. I did 2 tours of Northern Ireland, and, it was absolutely full on. We were doing all sorts of quite interesting stuff. I was a nurse first. Well, I was an officer first, and a soldier first. So I was flying around the border with the ammunition people. They were going out to blow bombs up and things like that, and they needed medical cover. So I went with them. And that was so far removed from what I was doing as a nurse on a ward, looking after old people and dressing ulcers. And you go away and you run around the Irish countryside and you come back and you're sticking dressings on people and you think, okay, I know which one I prefer doing.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
the person that you have, the other people you talk, don't have any concept of what you've just been doing. And it's quite difficult to come back from that,
Mm.
actually, and sort of get back into normal life again. It does take a while to adapt, and I found the same. Falklands was the same, and that's why I think going to Sark really helped. And you can just sort of wind it all down a bit, and then go back, and then go. I mean, I was lucky, I suppose, in the Navy, going back to Stonehouse Hospital in Plymouth. Virtually half the hospital had gone to the Falklands, so we were amongst friends. So that was fine, and we were all medics, so we could all share the same sort of
But of course,
stories.
Northern Ireland was a land
Mm,
war, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
now off the ships and
yeah.
the choppers and
Very
now into
different.
the back of trucks, I
Yeah,
imagine.
flying. Well, I seem to be ending up flying more actually than anything else. I used to fly all over the place, taking patients because I was out on the border. So I'd end up taking patients who were quite poorly up into the military hospital in Belfast.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of feel a bit ignorant now because when I was growing up, I didn't know about Northern Ireland and the
Yeah.
Falklands. Like it just wasn't spoken about. And obviously, and you see the pictures now of the Ukrainian soldiers
Yeah.
who, after 4 years of fighting, just look completely just.
Pretty worn out, aren't they? Yeah.
I mean, what would your advice be? I mean, to anyone that's experienced those sort of tremors, is there an easy
There's n
fix?
there's no easy fix to anything like that at all. I mean, the easy fix is don't do it.
Don't do
Don't sign
it.
up.
Isn't that strange? I mean, yeah, everyone always says that after the fact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't sign up. But it was one of those things that looking back on it, was an experience. I've learnt a lot from it. It benefited me, in terms of my own growth, and I'm really pleased that I've done all of that.
Mm.
Would I recommend it to people? Yes and no. Yes, because I think it grows people. It makes people realize a lot about themselves. Um, and you learn what you can and cannot do, what's acceptable to you and what's not, where your limitations lie, both professionally and personally. And I think that probably sounds all a bit deep, but you know what I mean? I think it's important for people as they go older to realize that there are certain things that you can do, and there are a lot of things you can't.
Mm.
Um, and I think, yeah, you learn from that big style.
That's a big learning
Yeah,
curve.
huge.
So, you obviously the only wars that I really understood a little bit of was the Afghan Iraq war. So, were you still serving at the time?
No, my son served, and Ali, my husband,
Oh
he
wow!
served in Iraq. My son Jake did 2 tours of Afghanistan on helicopters, funnily enough, in the Navy.
Oh my
So yeah, we've
god!
got a bit of a family sort of thing going on there.
Were you worried as a mum?
No, no, not at all. So Jake was in Helmand with his squadron from Culdrose, and he was a fixer of helicopters, so he didn't actually do an awful lot of sort of war flying around. So I was reasonably comfortable that he was, obviously Helmand did get shelled or bombed or whatever they did out there, but I felt comfortable with what he was doing. I'm very, very proud of what he was doing as well. So that was good. Ali was in Iraq. His tour was a lot dodgier, I think, in many respects, because he was out on the ground with the troops. Yeah, I think that was quite an interesting time. So yeah, we don't talk much about it. None of us really between ourselves. It's we've all got those experiences. Ali served in Northern Ireland as well. So yeah, we've had some good times and some bad, but it's as a family, it's made us a lot closer because Jake's grown up knowing mum and dad were in the military,
Mm.
um, and therefore he knew, if one parent was there, it meant the other one was probably away at war or doing something interesting somewhere on the other side of the world. But yeah, it was interesting times for a
Wow.
family.
You are fascinating, Sally. Well, I mean, this podcast is not long enough. I only got about 6 hours on the cameras here. But I mean, so kind of, I mean, just to sort of tie up then, your experience in the military compared to out of the military,
Mm.
what's the big differences? Is there a lack of structure or leadership that
Well,
you
it's
find,
just,
or what do you find?
the biggest problem is I haven't got a uniform.
Get
What the hell do
this
I do?
lady a
I need a
uniform.
uniform. Um,
Do you not have a paramedics
no,
get up and?
well, yeah, I've got badges and things, but it's not the same.
I bet, I bet. So tell me then, so at what point did you decide to come back to Alderney, or I mean, to retire here, I guess?
I didn't come back to retire. I came back to work.
Ah,
So I saw an advert for a GP locum in 2016 and on Alderney, and I thought, oh, childhood memories. What could possibly go wrong?
have a go
I'll
at that.
apply for that. And I came over at the end of 16, just before Christmas, and I did a week's locum job at the IMC. Loved it. Tracy said to me, "Can you come back and locum again in January and February?" I went, "Yes, of course I can."
Let's go.
And she said, "I think the Swedish doctors are going to go. I don't think they're going to stay. There might be an opening. Would you be interested?" I said, "Yeah, I would." So that was that. So in the January and February, I came back as a locum. And in the February, they offered me the job as clinical director here. So I took that, snapped that one up.
What does that mean?
So not a lot really. It's just a nice title.
Yeah.
So
Did they give you a uniform?
No,
No
did I?
uniform. God
No.
damn it.
I had scrubs, which is fine. I think doctors wearing scrubs is perfectly all right.
But is this the IMC then? Is that
Mm.
so your job was to look after basically the island of Alderney?
Yeah, that simplifies it a little bit. No, it wasn't like that in some respect. So basically, you had to have a clinical lead. You do in any medical organisations. So I filled those boots, and it meant actually a lot of the time I was on my own because we couldn't recruit other doctors here, which is an ongoing problem. Always has been, always will be, I think. And of course, we're responsible for the hospital as well. And a lot of people are going, well, I'm not going to go and work 24 hours a day and be on call for days in, days out because it's going to kill me. And so that happens as well. People burn out from that. And I think that's an important part of knowing about the work on this island is that it's a huge responsibility. The surgery work is great, fantastic team, really enjoy working there. And I still do. And as I say, when they're desperate, they call upon me to go and help out.
I bet they do.
So,
yeah.
if the weather's bad and the locums can't fly in, I'm the only doctor who still works there from time to time, who actually lives on the island.
Interesting.
So when the others can't get in for whatever reason, then I get
I'll do it.
called in. Yeah.
I always get really worried whenever I hear an ambulance on Alderney. Because you know everyone, if I'm in
Who
London,
is it this time?
yeah, exactly. It's very
Yeah.
scary. But we're very, very lucky here to have, the team that I guess you've
No,
seen it.
expected.
Why is it hard to recruit doctors in Alderney?
People don't want to be. I think it's about the fact that medically here we have all sorts of pathology. There is everything from well, I'm a good example. Broke my neck in 2021. Fell off a wall, broke my neck. Quite a severe head injury. People dislocate things. They fall off rocks. They fall in the sea. Any manner
Hold a
of
second,
really.
Sally, did you just say you broke your neck?
Yeah.
Whoa. You brushed over that like it was
Yeah.
just a casual thing. How did you break your neck?
I got pissed and fell over.
Do you know what? That's the best? I'm so happy. You could have said anything. Was that in the UK or was
No,
that here?
it was here.
It was here.
Yeah, it was here.
So who was the doctor? Who?
Well, it was at a doctor's birthday party.
I think I know it is. Oh my god. Okay, please start the story again. Tell me. So from the beginning.
I had a very rare night off from being on call. And it was a certain doctor's 40th birthday party, and we all went to his house. And he'd been taken out for a few drinks by a friend, and was absolutely plastered by the time he got back, I think. And it was September, early September. And we went upstairs outside, and I was talking to the police sergeant at the time, and I remember that bit. And there's a 4-foot drop, 5-foot drop down onto this patio from the steps. And I'd had a couple of fairly hefty glasses of margarita.
Ooh.
Never drink
I was gonna
margaritas.
say,
They
that's
are
a
a very,
difference, isn't
very,
it?
very dangerous drink. Made very extra strong by the Georgian team.
There you go.
Yeah.
The plot thickens.
No, drop them in it. So yeah, I had a extra glass of that, and decided in my wisdom that it was time to go home. And I remember all of this. I wasn't sort of absolutely steaming drunk, but obviously enough to slip and remember nothing more. And the police sergeant said to me after, he said, "I thought you were dead." And I'd fallen off the edge of the steps onto this concrete, and they had a little lip around this sort of flower bed area, and my neck had just gone over it and then twisted back. He said it was all a bit grim. And then my
God.
colleague came down, the one who wasn't drinking and was on call. She came out, and the doctor whose birthday it was said she wasn't knocked out and her neck's fine. And my husband turned up, and I got taken down to hospital and then carted off on the Flying Christine the next day to Guernsey. And I sort of ended up in there, and the consultant who I knew really well, he said, well, there's no head injury, but you have broken your neck. And I just sort of lay there a bit stunned going, I've broken my neck. I've broken my neck.
Yeah, why aren't you dead?
Oh my God. And then, yeah.
Where's the eggnog?
Yes, I could have done with a bit of eggnog by
I
then.
bet. And did you learn your lesson after this, or are we still
Yeah, I've
repeating
learned
the
my
same?
lesson. I have never drunk a margarita since.
That's funny. What's your normal drink? Wine?
Gin and tonic.
Oh, gin and tonic.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. So, I mean, I think I know who that doctor is, but obviously, before we continue, I want to say a massive thank you to Alderney Electricity for backing this podcast. On an island of just 2,000 people, sometimes it can be quite easy to take the energy we have for granted. But behind every light switch is a team of electricians, engineers, and administrators working hard to keep us going. But they don't just power our homes, they power our community with local sponsorship like this. Alderney Electricity continues to support the events, the projects, and of course the stories that bring our island together. Alderney Electricity, thank you very much for keeping our lights on and for sponsoring this podcast. That's the nice thing about this island, is that we all know our own doctors. I know I think it's great because you have patient confidentiality, but you must know everything.
I know a lot.
That's
I know a bit. I don't know
amazing.
as much as I used to know.
Yeah. Well, this
but yeah.
island's very hard at keeping secrets,
Yeah.
but I think that the team at the IMC are so professional.
They are.
Is it fair to say that, I mean, are people pickled from the inside here? Because they seem to be living forever.
Ooh, I think actually alcohol probably does help in an extent.
Weird, isn't it?
Yeah. I once, so when I was clinical director, I gave the States members at the time a presentation to say, look, these are the major problems, the medical problems that we've got. And it was a serious conversation with them. And I outlined the sort of 5 major problems that we had sort of 2018 to 2020. And I said, one of them is alcohol and drug dependency. And then we had other things like sort of pregnancy, getting ladies off to have their babies, the very elderly, dementia, all that kind of stuff. And I sort of reiterated this thing about alcohol dependency. And one particular person, not on the States, I sort of speaking to about this later on, and they said, nonsense. I said, well, look, 5% of the population is probably an alcoholic, or at least a hazardous drinker. And I said, that means about 100 people. Rubbish, absolute rubbish. There's nothing like 100 people who are alcoholics on this island. And I thought, and this person obviously was an alcoholic who I was having this conversation with, and in complete denial about it. I would not accept that there were that many alcoholics, or that alcoholism was even a problem. Which it is.
Did the States enact any initiatives or do anything?
No.
Well, there you go. It's funny you say this because so I used to work in tech companies, and I was out in San Francisco working for a med tech startup who were trying to introduce whole foods and fasting into the insurance market, which of course they failed. But to reduce type 2 diabetes and stuff. Blue zones are the fascinating places in the world where people live past 100. So I was sent on a little journey to go and interview all of the cardiologists that I could possibly meet in San Francisco and around California. And after interviewing this fascinating guy, for our pitch deck or whatever it was, and I said, "Oh, just one more thing before you go. What's the opposite of a blue zone?" And he goes, "Well, there isn't really an opposite of a blue zone, Cam, but there is this place called Guernsey, and it has the highest amount of alcoholics per capita." And I thought, I had no idea where that is. It was fascinating.
Really?
Yeah, he pulls out this graph and he shows.
Really?
I'm sure the statistics are in some way measured on size of
Yeah.
population
Well,
or
absolutely.
whatever.
I thought actually when I googled that, Sark came up as being the one with the most per capita.
With a bailiwick.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. But in fact, when I started doing this, because I prepared for this presentation,
Of course,
and Alderney's always been considered, 2,000 alcoholics clean. Yeah, I get actually quite cheesed off with that kind of description of it now. Every island in the world, Australia, big islands also have huge problems with alcohol. And I think it's not just the fact that we're Channel Islands, every island has that. There's always going to be a number of people wherever you go who are going to have that sort of tendency towards self-destruction of whatever it is.
Of course,
If it keeps them going for as long as it does, great. And there's an awful lot of people who manage alcohol and hazardous drinking on this island without too much of a problem.
Of course, yeah.
And they don't struggle. They seem to succeed in everything they do.
I mean, I know that I'm I guess I'm joking because I don't know why we joke about alcohol, but the flip side of this is obviously the bad things that come from it, and particularly like suicide, which is actually higher in the Channel Islands than it is the UK, and it's like, yes, if your life is in order and you've got everything on track, then you can go and have a drink every day and you're not going to isolate yourself or self-harm. But actually it's the people in the community that actually are drinking because they're trying to fix a problem that I really get scared about, just
I would love to see and Guernsey and Nikki Brink, we had long conversations about how to tackle the problem, but obviously there has to be a political will. And if you're charging huge amounts of tax on a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of gin, that's going to be a little bit more important in terms of filling your coffers up than it is for actually sort of treating people's liver.
I see. Interesting. Wow.
That's my own take on the subject.
That's the way the world works, isn't it? Incentives.
There's money in it.
But weirdly, I think one of the highest indicators of a long life is community and connection.
Yes.
Even above your physical health, and that's something that Alderney absolutely smashes.
Yeah, it has in spades.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's great, and no more seen than when we started doing the vaccinations after COVID, during COVID, and seeing the number of people who would come out and queue up, and the elderly people, and there would be all these lovely conversations, and it was almost like a community queue, if you like. Come, have a chat about things because people could then come out and mingle, stick their arm out, get a jab, come back in a month's time and have another one, or whatever it was. And that community spirit. And we had the highest number of positively vaccinated people in the world.
Wow.
At one particular point. We had about 97%.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because we did so well over here. I mean, I remember I was living in a warehouse in North London at the time, and I got over here as soon as I could. And I think, was it a good 6 months of a year?
It was a year.
But without the lockdown implemented.
It was a year before we had our first case.
That's
on the island.
mental, isn't it? I remember telling my mates, I was like, it's awful over here, mate. It's awful. And then I was just going to Georgia, because the world went through this mad time. Did you see this coming in any way? I mean, did you always know about the risk of...
No. I mean, Ali and I were actually in the States in December 2019 on holiday, and we came back to this island.
This is the United States.
The United States, yeah.
Not the States
And
of
of course,
Alderney.
why would we go on holiday with them? No. United States, came back, and within a couple of weeks, people were starting to go, "Oh, have you seen what's going on in Italy? Have you seen what's going on in Spain?" There's all sorts of stuff going on everywhere. And then, of course, it all completely took off, and we were glued to the TV screens. And from my point of view, kind of Nikki Brink's 2IC for Alderney, sort of heading up the public health side of what we were going to do. We had lots of meetings. I mean, it was fascinating. I've still got all my notes and things from that time. And it would probably make quite an interesting thing I can't be bothered, but it would be quite interesting. And I've looked back at some of it and God, we were expecting huge numbers of casualties and deaths because of, unfortunately, our aging population, and quite a sick population sometimes as well. But we got away with it. Why did we get away with it? How did we get away with it? We locked down. We protected people. I think people were scared. And again, I think that might have been due to the fact that with an older population, they would listen. I mean, William was great. He would go on the news whenever he could, and lead by example. And we would fill in the details medically. And I think people were so scared that it prevented an awful lot of what could have happened if people had gone, whatever, it's not going to happen here. Let's all go off and party. And I think we were very, very lucky from that point of view. Pretty much everybody
Took
stuck
it
to the
very
rules.
seriously. I remember kicking my dad out of this house because me, my mum, and my sister had come to Alderney together.
Yeah.
And so it was like, right, there's 3 of us and there's 1 of you.
Off you go.
Get out of the house. Yeah. But you isolate.
Yeah.
You just follow the rules because you don't know anything about this, and
You don't know what's going to happen.
But the thing is, this is why I love the military so much, because you do learn to, just follow.
Yeah,
And
do as you're told.
Do as you're told. That's it. Unless you are willing to be the leader, then be the follower.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it, isn't it?
It worked. It worked here, and we got away with it. Did we get away with it? No, I think we were good. We
were good.
Everybody, the whole team worked. The team.
I'm so grateful that you were here during that time, because of course not a lot of people understood that when we were all in it. But there are adults in the room in some in most areas, in society. There's always it only works because there's people with there's years and years of experience who have now found themselves in a crisis that, don't worry, they're the best to handle it.
Yeah.
I mean, do you kind of go into these crises now with a bit more chill, or does your heart beat when you're, when you attend a scene or you're?
Yeah, it does. I mean, obviously, I'm involved with motorsport on the Isle of Man now. So,
of course, the TT races.
With the TT, yeah. So, I'm still get involved with pre-hospital care. Things happen. Generally, my role is up in race control. It's much more of an administrative thing and running helicopters and things, and I'm not really that much hands-on anymore. But every now and then, something happens in the paddock. Somebody falls over, has a cardiac arrest, whatever. Or I'm seeing riders who've got pretty damn injured, and I have to deal with that. Yeah, it is still a bit of a sort of.
Do you find it like? Is it?
Yeah, the adrenaline. You can feel the adrenaline going. But you go back to
Interesting.
first principles, and you go back to what you've been taught, and you think, right, okay, start from the top. How am I going to manage this? And that again is something all doctors and nurses are taught, I think. And if you go back to your first principles and do it as a follow a protocol, you can't go far wrong. Obviously having experience really helps, because you might have seen that before and go, actually, I know what we could do here. And it's great for teaching other people and bringing other people on as well. I love doing that.
Do you know what, you've just reminded me. We were doing first aid training with the Army cadets. It was like our instructor course. So we were very excited because we were going to get the green badge and we're now going to be instructors. And it was about seizures, right? And this guy is telling us about seizures. He's from St. John's Ambulance. And just right there, kid in front of me drops to the floor and starts having a seizure. And I looked at the guy giving the training, who froze, couldn't
believe that it had happened for real.
And of course, I'm so thankful. There's a lady called Wendy Rishton, who was our in charge of our unit. She was so good. I mean, she just jumped straight to it, laid him down, did all the things. But I remember looking into that guy's eyes and thinking, oh, interesting. Interesting how in the moment when you think you have to act, sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah.
And it's not against him, but it's that's what experience.
If you don't see that sort of thing very often, then yes, it can makes you
Of
think,
course. I hope that kid's all right, by the way. I'm sure all I cared about was my badges.
yeah,
Just
I need a
about,
green badge.
yeah,
Oh,
a bit like you with your uniforms. I love the uniforms. It's absolutely
yeah,
brilliant, isn't it? Well, look,
absolutely brilliant.
let's talk a little bit about what you do for fun because you're a bit of a nutter.
Yeah.
You've been in the sea this morning.
Uh-huh.
Why do you sea swim? Is it just because you're
Yeah, I
bored?
don't know. I
Oh,
think so. You've interviewed my very good friend Tess Woodnut. So we have a theory that going into the sea with just your swimsuit on is great, and it's good for you. It's good for your mental health. Um, and my husband said to me, "He said, well, aren't you wearing a wetsuit? It's January, you're bonkers. You always wear a wetsuit by now." And I went, "Yeah, as long as my feet are warm and my hands are warm and my head's warm, it doesn't matter because you get this feeling of the water on your bare skin, even though it's freezing cold. Actually, the water's a bit warmer than the air temperature at the moment. So, you go in the sea to warm up. Unfortunately, when you come out, you get this thing called after drop. And that comes in about 20 minutes, half an hour later. And you come out and you're all wrapped up, hats on, hot water bottles, a cup of hot soup, and you go home. And then all of a sudden you just go, and you're like this, you're absolutely shivering like mad. And you just think, oh, and you can't do anything sensible with your hands for about 10 minutes until you started to really warm up. So hot tub, hot shower,
is
that
it?
sort of thing.
I mean, I thought you're not supposed to go from hot to cold.
Well, tell that to the Finnish. I mean, they have saunas and then they go and do stupid things and beat themselves up with sticks or whatever it is.
Ice and stuff, yeah,
Yeah.
like the Iceman.
Yeah.
Isn't that's where it
Go
all?
plunge in a lake or
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
and then go back in the
absolutely.
sauna.
And actually, there's nothing better than getting into a hot
Yeah.
shower after going down on Bray in January. I have not been in the sea yet this year. I wonder why. I don't actually know really. I
Well,
think
we could invite you. You could make a guest appearance.
I would love to, but I'm super busy. We've got all these people to
Yeah.
interview, and
Don't think
we've got
so.
plenty of things to do, including, I mean, obviously Tess was telling me a little about your girls' trips. Now, let me just get this right. It says 2 girls, 2 boats, 2 nights, and many bottles of wine.
Well,
I
2 bottles of wine.
I believe that you ended up just both deciding let's go to France,
Yeah.
but you didn't want to take each other's
No,
boats.
I wanted to take my boat. So I've got a motorboat. I've got a 31-foot motorboat called Starlight. And I bought Starlight when I broke my neck. So I hadn't even seen Starlight. And she got delivered up here by her previous owner from Guernsey. And everybody said, well, actually it was Tess's boyfriend Buzz who'd said, look, get this boat. It's a perfect boat for a beginner. Just what you need. Because I knew that my sailing days really were coming to an end. I found that I was really struggling with all the sort of very physical side of things, especially on Tess's boat.
Of course, yeah.
So having a sitting on a seat and driving, I thought, driving Miss Daisy in my little motorboat would be much more fun and
love that.
entertaining. So so that's what we did, and we thought she'll sail, I'll motor. So we headed over to Cherbourg. I'd never been on my own into Cherbourg, hadn't a bloody clue what I was doing. Luckily, Tess got in there before me and helped with ropes and things. And yeah, we did.
Wow, so you're a sailor now.
Well, I did my day skippers anyway. I'd done that. That must have been just before COVID, actually. So yeah, I did my day skippers course anyway. Great fun. Passed all of that, and I thought, yeah, I can do all of this. I can't, not very well. I'm still quite nervous.
Sure. Well,
But
yeah.
I've been up and down. Last year, I took the boat down to Guernsey a couple of times in quite heavy weather, and
Ooh,
managed. Bricking it most of the way, but
I bet.
quite enjoyed it.
Because this is really rough waters around here, right?
It was, and I just desperately wanted to get home, and it was okay, but and I picked the tide and the wind behind me coming back up, and I brought a couple of people with me actually, and I said, I kept checking out to make sure they were all right and they hadn't fallen overboard, and I got back and I said, how was it? And they said, oh, we fell asleep.
Oh, nice.
They fell asleep.
There
I
you
mean, the
go.
boat was doing, I don't know what, top and turning all over the place, and I thought, I'm going to lose them.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It was great.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it. They loved
Yeah,
it.
I never thought I'd get seasick, but I was on the Trinity recently. It wasn't even seasick. I had this weird nightmare that I was on a sinking ship and I woke up in the cabin of a ship, and I thought, hold a second, there's something wrong about this. But it's something to do with the sea that's so terrifying. Particularly the idea of the open ocean. Does that scare you in any way?
Yeah, I I do actually. I have dreams occasionally about drowning or not drowning. I
I wonder
actually
what
had a
that
really
means.
bad experience when I was diving years ago in Plymouth, and I was doing quite a deep dive with a buddy, luckily. And we were diving in the main shipping channel, which where all the warships come out of and the lifeboats come out of in Plymouth. And we were down at 42 meters on this very steep slope, and the regulator I was breathing from stopped working, and my gauge started to swing, which meant that there was obviously an obstruction somewhere within the air supply from to my regulator.
Oh my God.
And I turned and looked at my buddy, and luckily the viz was quite clear and he could see me. And I said, I'm out of air. And I didn't actually let go my belt at the time, which stupidly I probably should have done. But I could hear engines above me. And I knew where I was, I went straight up, that I would surface right in the middle of the shipping channel. So I knew I had to go inshore, basically follow the slope upwards to come up. And I got to about 30 meters with this guy following me. And then we started doing some buddy breathing for another sort of 10 meters or so. And that's where we share a regulator between us. But it's quite hard work doing that when you're on a slope, trying to go up and trying to maintain your buoyancy and not go too quickly and not too slowly. So in the end, I just tapped him on the head and said, I'm going up. And I just sort of went up sort of at an angle and surfaced. And my boyfriend at the time was on the shore. And he says, you came out like a bloody Polaris. And the buddy I was with came up very shortly afterwards. And we were both sort of a bit out of breath and a bit sort of, ooh, okay, that was close. And I could see as I turned round, the Plymouth lifeboat was the engines, and that's what had just gone over. And if I'd had surfaced straight away and
Might have got
gone
your
straight
head
up,
knocked.
that would have been, yeah, not just a
Crazy.
broken neck, probably.
And have you done any diving since? I mean, have you-
I was out. I go on holiday with a buddy, another diving doctor. So I ended up specialising in diving medicine once I was qualified as a doctor. So I'm now the
Wow.
bailiwick and Jersey, actually, sort of specialist doctor in diving medicine. So I advise on any diving. So that's what I'm on call for, basically. Not that I
Right.
think anybody would hopefully be daft enough to
Yeah.
be going doing
What
stupid
what
stuff.
what are the injuries that people get diving? I mean, drowning is
Well,
obviously
decompression sickness is the main one. Obviously, the
that's
bends.
the bends.
Yeah.
Coming up too soon.
Coming up too quickly and not letting all the gas sort of go off out in solution. Burst lung. So pneumothorax, so the lungs can burst if you come up and hold your breath. It's like a balloon popping, basically.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's messy.
What do you do about that?
Well,
It's
if they've survived, well, you have to just sort of treat first principles again.
Sure.
Airway, breathing, circulation.
taken to the hospital as quick as possible.
Yeah. So burst lung, so gas embolism. If there's a air bubble that expands, it can expand in the brain, it can expand in the heart. If you can recompress them and get them back down under pressure again and squish the bubble back down again, and then you bring them out very much more slowly.
Interesting.
But it's usually that happens within about 10 minutes of surfacing, and if they're big, they're severe, they're usually fatal.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's
great fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised you got nightmares, Sally.
I do have
That's
nightmares
crazy.
about that one.
So before we finish this episode, I want to thank Bell & Co for sponsoring this podcast. If you're looking for a place to live on Alderney, whether it's renting or buying, go and visit Bell & Co. They have all the information about what's available on Alderney, and they can also guide you with some of the best things to do on the island. Go and visit bellandco.com, where you can see how to escape to paradise, whether you're a remote worker, a carer, or just want to raise a family in somewhere safe. Bell & Co is there to help you. The only time I ever went diving, I was with a girlfriend in Egypt, and I was like, shall we go diving? Or like, let's go couples diving, whatever. And in the last minute, she decided she didn't want to do it. And so I got put this fat American guy who literally we're tethered to each other. And he wanted to go down further. And my eyeballs started popping out. And I thought, actually, I probably should have said, let's go up. But I thought, he's a pretty big guy, so let's keep going down. And I don't know if it would have eventually popped, but it just felt like my
Yeah.
one eyeball was coming so far out, and
Oh,
I kept going deeper. It was because it wasn't even that
it
deep.
was mask squeeze, so you had to equalize the air inside your mask as well as yeah.
They weren't great instructors,
No,
I'll be honest with you. I
doesn't
mean,
sound like
these
it
tourist
was.
sort of destinations, they're like, come and
Yeah.
dive, whatever. They're like,
Yeah, take the
here's a
money off you.
tank. There you go.
Oh,
So
Christ. Yeah.
that is what it is. Sally, you have also got a bit of a passion for motorcycles, is that right?
Yeah,
Are
love
you
motorbikes.
trying to die, or are you? What is it? Where did you get the motorcycle hobby
I don't know.
from?
It's just this mad thing, isn't it, really? I suppose um Alistair, my husband, and my son, aged 17, said, Mum, go and learn to ride a motorbike. And I said, No, I've worked in accident departments for most of my life. Seen far too many motorcyclists come off and, not done too well out of it. So, no, I'm not doing it. And then one day, Alistair said, Could you just go down the bike shop and pick me up some exhaust pipes? And I said, Yeah, all right. He said, And while you're down there, darling, if you see anything you like, don't forget to buy it, motorbike wise. And I went, Okay, I'm not buying a motorbike. So I went down there, got his exhaust pipes, bought myself a 125, like you
No.
do. Yeah. Got hold of it, fell off it the first day. In fact, I've fallen off every single bike on the first day practically that I've ever had, and I've had about 7 now.
But have you gone
Yeah.
up in power?
Skill, yeah. Skill, no. Power,
Skill, no
yeah.
power. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've gone up, so I did my bike test fairly shortly after that because I realised the 125 wasn't strong enough, wasn't powerful enough for me. Okay.
The girl needs
Oh, I
speed.
need speed. Yeah, going up a hill, you could probably run faster. So I then did the big bike test, and I had a 900 cc. So that was my second bike. Was a Bonneville, which was great because actually a bigger bike gets you out jail free because you've got a little bit much more power, so you can and a bit more control. Funnily enough. So that was my excuse anyway, so I'm sticking to it. So I got myself a Bonneville, fell off that in France. Ali and I did a tour of all of the cemeteries, the American cemeteries and the beaches on our bikes. That was great.
Great.
We've done a couple of tours hiring bikes in the States. We biked from San Francisco down to Los Angeles. We did a great big trip around Arizona, Nevada, Utah, places like that, the Grand Canyon, all of that on bikes. That was a
Wow.
fantastic trip. Yeah.
Are you part of a gang? Is this
No, it was just me and Ali.
just you and
gang,
Ali?
Yeah. But that got me into obviously riding at the TT, not racing, I hasten
I
to add.
see.
They wanted doctors, so I ended up being out on the ground looking after riders who'd fallen. And it's a big course to, lots of riders fall off. Some die. We've had a lot of fatalities over the years, unfortunately. But I'm absolutely hooked on that. Having said that, this year is going to be my last year doing the TT and the Manx. But I'm the Chief Medical Officer for the Southern 100, which is the smaller course down south in the Isle of Man at Castletown. And I absolutely love being down there. It's a completely different feel to it.
I've never been to the Isle of Man.
Oh, you
Is
must.
it? I mean, it's huge,
beautiful.
isn't it?
No,
Is it not?
it's got fewer people than Jersey. It's bigger than Jersey,
No
but it's got
way.
mountains and it's got sea. It's got everything.
Oh, so you really like it up there?
Yeah, I love it. The
Oh,
only thing that puts me off going to live there is the weather.
yeah.
I mean, it's covered in snow at the moment.
In the middle of the Irish
Yeah.
Sea, right?
Yeah, it's in the middle of the Irish Sea and it gets
Wow.
weather.
How do you get there?
It's a good question. Sometimes I fly to Gatwick and get EasyJet, which is cheap, to the Isle of Man.
How cheap? Go on, hurt
Oh,
me.
29 quid.
Bloody hell.
£29 one way. Yeah.
It's a big island, isn't it?
£164 just to get to Southampton.
It's crazy.
Mm.
So I went to Bangkok for like 145 quid.
I know.
Like, I mean, but that's one of the issues that obviously we hope,
Well, we know. Well, I see that hopefully they're going to be flying to Jersey, then I can get an EasyJet from Jersey.
That's why I was going on the Trinity because, Bruno was like, look,
Yep.
get on, and so 14 hours on stop off in Guernsey and you're in Jersey and the
Yeah.
next thing you know, you're back in
Wherever
London
you
for
need to
40
be.
quid return.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Happy days.
connectivity is obviously
that's
one
what
of
we
the
need.
biggest issues, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It
totally.
really is. Well, look, I mean, Sally, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I'm always happy to have you back on the show. If you ever say, Cam, we got to talk to people.
No, there's so much. I mean, there's all the other stuff that no, I like talking about motorbikes. I like talking about diving. I'll probably write it all down one of these days. I mean, the book is a separate thing. It's a novel based on a true story,
Ooh,
based in Sark.
excellent.
So I'm doing a bit of research about that at the moment.
Ooh,
Um,
okay. Well, that's
yeah,
exciting.
and that's
Stay
really
tuned.
where my semi-retirement's heading, and I'm getting quite excited about it. I've got so many ideas. I just don't know how to finish it. And I've had a lot of help with people on Ireland. Got quite famous authors here who've
Of
really been
course.
great.
Yeah.
I said, don't worry, the book will probably write itself, and actually, you don't need to worry too much about how to finish it. It will
It's
come to you.
amazing.
So I'm looking forward to doing that. Really excited about that.
Well, whatever you do, don't bring it to my mum's book club because they don't actually read the books. Sorry,
It's true.
mum. Sorry, mum. I picked her up last night. They were all pissed as a
Oh
fart.
no.
And they said, we didn't actually read it. I said I was going to report them to the book club association. I think some of them thought I would. But no,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's lovely as well. Like, you want to make a book. Oh, just so happens we have one of the world's best authors living on the island. So this island is just full of these interesting people, isn't
No,
it?
it's great. It's great.
Well, look, I mean, yeah, like that's basically it for now. But what are you going to do this year in 2026? Right? It's a big year. Apart from the book.
So I've got a bit of work to do with the TT, finishing off all of that and looking for a successor for me.
Amazing.
And that's going to be, not sure how we're going to do that, but we'll find a solution to that. Go look after Ali because he's gone off to go and have his operation. So that's going to take up a bit. I've got to put my little nursing hat on now and go and be a nice nurse.
Oh,
He's got to be a nice patient though.
I bet. I mean, yeah, you must sometimes work with patients who you're like, I don't want to help you. Probably not anymore, shall we say?
No, I love everybody. You always
Yeah.
want to help everybody.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, I grew up in a residential care home, as you know. So, I mean, I can see what good care looks like, and there is a Welsh word that my mum uses, hoil, which is this like enthusiasm. If someone throws their shit at you, you're like, hey, what's that?
you.
Thank you.
Oh, how thoughtful.
I don't know how they do it, but we certainly need carers on this
Yeah,
island,
we
right?
need a lot. Yeah.
I mean, is that going to get even worse in the next sort of 5-10
Our
years?
demographic is, I'm 67 now. I'm going to be looking for my place somewhere. Where is it going to be? It might be in the dementia home as part of the Connaught. Who knows?
So if we were to, okay, I don't know if this would work, but like if we could attract, carers to come here, not necessarily to start a care home and another care home, but to have people live in their houses, would that be something that we might be able to do?
I don't know. I think what we need to do is address the key workers situation first. It's not just about the care assistants and people like that. What you do see, though, is that the very wealthy can afford to have living carers, but the less wealthy can't. And they're the ones who we need to be looking out for, and they're the ones who are struggling. And I think we need to find some solution for them, and that would mean generally more beds available. With that demographic, we've got to have people who are prepared to look after the very elderly. We've had somebody well over 100. In fact, there's still several people well over 100 living on the island. But anybody sort of 60 plus onwards, there's a lot of those people around. And there's a lot of pathology around. So there's people even younger who are struggling. A lot of people on their own. And it's something, again, the states need to be looking at addressing. Are they going to? Yeah, I think they're beginning to. But we need to get key worker homes, affordable homes for them. This shouldn't just be a place for the wealthy.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Well, that's what we're all trying to help with. It is a team effort, though, isn't it? I mean, just going back to my comment about the states needing some military training, it's simply because if you've got a load of resources in front of you, but you refuse to use them.
I mean, you've got buildings sitting there derelict or empty. I mean, I had a little tour around the old Connaught a little while. Have you ever been in there?
Of course, yeah. We used to put the
I was
blowers in there in Alderney.
astonished
Amazing
by it.
space. Amazing space.
What about, that's just gone to rack and ruin. I mean, it's in a terrible state. What a shame.
Oh, God. Leadership is one of those amazing things that when you don't have it, you don't know you need it.
Yeah.
Because you're so busy trying to fight
Very
to
true.
just have some sanity,
Yeah.
and competence is definitely one of my core values that came from the military days. And sometimes I
Yeah.
just wish there'd be a leader in charge. You know, I don't want all this committee stuff
Mm.
because it's pass the blame, pass the blame. Oh,
No.
we haven't. And like I said to you earlier, I always assume there's an adult somewhere
Yeah.
taking care of something. A lot of the
Don't
time,
you
there's
believe
not.
it? No, you
Well,
do. You need a leader, and this is what this society has gone to now, is that they don't want to have leaders because they see that as a very sort of institutional.
undemocratic.
Yeah. Oh, it's autocracy, and it's not actually. It can be democracy and very good democracy, because that person's elected to do that. But you don't need, committee decisions and 10 people to make a decision. Hmm. 10 people for 2,000 people? Don't think so.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Well, look, to finish off, then, why don't you just tell me what are how would you sell Alderney to these nurses out there who would want to come here? What are the things you just love about Asylum? What's so unique?
The island is beautiful. There's no doubt about it. It's peaceful. I think, yes, the natural side of the island would be the big draw for me, but I'm a lot older. What's going to appeal to younger people? It's difficult. I think if you do want some peace and quiet and a place where you can get on and prosper and be professional, then this is the place for you.
Mm,
But be prepared to work hard. Be prepared for terrible weather. Be prepared to be away from your family and perhaps have difficulty in getting to see them
mhm,
because we haven't got great transport links. Those are the sort of things that need to be dealt with to encourage people. And until we can be absolutely certain we've got that in a year-round situation, I think we're going to struggle really to get the right calibre of people here. We've
mm,
got some fantastic people here at the moment. If we could grow our own, even better, people who aren't particularly going to want to leave the island. But we also need new thinking as well across the board, not just in care side of things, but in everything. We need to have critical thinkers who can come in and go, do you know
mm.
what? Have you thought about doing this? And we're getting there, the things that Ian Corder and Jojo and people like that are
Fantastic.
doing, things that you're doing, there's people coming in who have got great new ideas and we need to welcome them, and then get everybody working together and get rid of that sort of, well, we always used to do it like that. So we should carry
Mm,
on doing it like that.
that's
That
it.
that
Yeah.
difficulty, that sort of blinkered mentality and the sort of glacial movement, I think we've got to move away from as soon as possible.
Well, Sally, I look forward to the future. I
Hmm.
think there is hope. And yeah, thanks very much for doing this.
No, my pleasure. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks a lot.
With you.